Hello, 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 and welcome to 52 Weeks of Flow, the podcast that delves into the depth of human potential and the transformative power of flow. On this show, we talk about peak performance, flow, energy, and bridge the gap between science and woo-woo. Through authentic stories and real-life examples, my guests and I will help you dive into your superpowers and create your next level of success. My name is Bea-Marie, neuroscience geek, flow enthusiast, and your guide to rewilding yourself. I'm on a mission to raise the frequency of the planet by supporting you to untame yourself and step into your flow. Hello, 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 my beautiful flow lovers. In today's episode, we've got somebody truly amazing for you. Let me introduce you to Sally Pederson, a #1 international best-selling and award-winning travel writer. She's also the mastermind behind Global Citizen Life. This is so fascinating. Sally isn't just another traveler. She's lived in 5 countries and visited over 50, soaking up all kinds of cultures and economies along the way. So Sally got this really incredible belief that our lives and wealth should not be tied down by just one government. She's all about living with choice, freedom, and pushing for a life where we can be global citizens. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Welcome back to the stage, Sally Pederson. Oh, there's the button.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to speak with you and thrilled to be here.
I love what you do, because I truly believe in global citizenship. When people ask me, where do you come from? I always say, well, I'm from Earth. I live on this planet and I try to live wherever I want to. And I love to travel wherever I want to. I want the world to be my teacher. And what you're teaching and what you're bringing to the world is just right that. So please tell me about your story. How did you get there? How did you get this mindset of global citizenship?
Well, it wasn't really one kind of turning point. There was little bits. So the first kind of, I would say, spark or thought, I was probably around 15 or 16 years old. I was still in high school, and I'm originally from Canada. So it probably was on a cold winter day because I hate cold. But I remember being outside of school with my friends and saying, I don't think my parents are really my parents. And they said, what? You've been switched at birth? Like your parents aren't your parents? And I kind of laughed and I said, no, like I do believe biologically my parents are my parents. I belong to my family. I said, but I don't know. There's just, there's something in me that says I'm not meant to live in Canada my whole life. Like it just doesn't seem right. And, we kind of brushed it off, laughed about it, probably thought it was just winter and cold, and everybody knew I hated winter. And just kind of forgot about it. And then probably about fast forward 8 years later, I ended up, it was probably about 8 years from there, I ended up moving abroad for the first time. And so I briefly moved abroad, and then I moved to Italy for a little while and then came back to Canada. But then the kind of pivotal move was back in 2011. But prior to that, there were a few events that kind of happened. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I know I'm not meant to live here. It was clear then. And I started to read different magazines on moving abroad and watching House Hunters International and things. And I was just like, I need to move abroad. I need to go. And just kind of opportunity kind of hit. And I just said, this is it. Like, this is my time. I need to do it now. It wasn't planned as well as I say to people. It's basically like, do as I say, not as I do, because the way I do things is pretty extreme generally. And my first move was to Costa Rica with my 13-year-old daughter and our dog, and it was 3 one-way tickets. We did not know anybody there. We had been there previously and had a home there, a vacation property there. So we were going to go move there. I had no idea where she was going to go to school. The school year had already started a week before the move. And I was just like, I'll figure it out. We'll just go and I'll figure it out. And all my friends would say, you know what? We knew that you would go. We just didn't think yet. Like we thought we would have you around for a few more years. And then they would say, but and even if it doesn't work out, you can always come back. And every time they said that, I felt like I was stabbed in the stomach. Like, oh God, like come back? Like that's utter failure was my view at the time. Like I was like, no, I'm going. Like coming back. Yes, I know it, but it was not an option, even though I knew it was an option.
While you were speaking, I'm just smiling, and inside of me, everything is like, yes. And a question came up, and that question is, have we been separated by birth? At birth?
Maybe.
Because when around 15, 16, I also questioned if my parents were my parents, not biologically, but in a way that I felt so different and wanted so many different things than they did. And I also, when I was, how old was I? Was 21, and I was like, I'm going to move abroad. I'm just going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were separated at birth, you're the courageous one of us, because I let my parents hold me back.
Well, 21 though, I was 35. And I had a number of life events through my life that I think I was mature for my age. For the most part, I did immature things, of course, but overall more mature for my age for a very long time.
Okay. No, for me, it was always this, I'm a very loyal person. So my mom always got me with this, oh, but your grandparents are so old, this is maybe their last Christmas. Or maybe this is that you have already lived abroad for a year. You have already been away for 6 months. You have already done this. Maybe they lived another 15 years.
Sorry. I mean, that's wonderful. That is great. It's wonderful. But yeah, and that comes up when I talk with people and they say, oh, well, my parents are getting older, and I'll ask how old they are. And even if they're 80, I say to them, like, yeah, that is. And we don't know. Like I live on the belief that I could get hit by a bus tomorrow because I could. I exercise, I'm pretty healthy, I eat well, but I could have a heart attack tomorrow and die, or even today. Like we never really know. But even people at 80, and they say, well, my parents, they're about 80, they could still live another 20 years. People are easily living till 100. Of course, not everybody, but it's happening more and more. And so we never know. And then I just think we don't want to live, because that's kind of like the what if to the negative. And we don't want to live the what if to the negative. And so I would just say, spend time with those people, go visit them, make sure it's quality time, as opposed to just going over and sitting on the couch and watching TV. Like to me, that's not spending time with people. I mean, there's no point. You might as well just not be there. Yeah. And you spend that quality time. And then when you come back, you visit, you spend quality time again.
Absolutely. I know that now.
Hindsight, right? Now I know.
Always, when you look back on events, you're like, it could have been, but
right.
It was good for that period of time. It was good for me to stay where I was, because there were other things for me to discover and explore and do. So, but coming back to multi-citizenships, to like the idea, like, I think this is so revolutionary. The idea of international bank account is not that revolutionary, but tax reduction and optimization through having multi citizen, yeah, that's
Through
yeah.
global, we say through global diversification. And
Yes.
I mean, a lot of us, we've heard the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And most times, at least for me, when I heard that a long time ago, I would always think, oh, don't put all my investment into one stock. Or even, and then it was, oh, just don't put it all just in stock. Have maybe some stock and other investments so they're not in one basket. But how we think about it now is, don't keep all your eggs in one basket, as in one country. Because if things, and I don't, and not even necessarily have to completely go in the tank, but we know like there's cycles. Things are up, things are down, things are up, things are down. And we're all yay when it's up and boo when it's down, because everything is connected into that country. You've got your stocks in there, you've got your real estate in there, your bank accounts are in there, you live there, everything is tied in. But when we can move that, and it, for me, I didn't know it either. I figured I live in Canada. Of course, I have my bank accounts in Canada. Of course, my company's in Canada. I live in Canada. Of course, this is where I live. I didn't realize that for tax purposes, for legal protection of getting sued and other things, that having my corporation in another country is much better, because other countries don't charge as much for corporate tax. Now, obviously, every country is different. There's some that charge none, and there's some that charge 20, 30%. So it's all different. But just because I'm Canadian, I do not get the best tax rate in Canada. I get a much better and lower tax rate having my company outside of Canada. Sometimes there's less paperwork to do. You always have to do paperwork. Even for people, if they go to a no tax country, you're still filing documents and paperwork. They want to make sure that you're not money laundering and, giving money to terrorists. And as a business owner, you would want to have paperwork filed and things done, because then you know where your money's going and what's coming in and what's happening with your business. But we can reduce that. And, having citizenships and residencies also allow us to travel and move around easier. Citizenships can give us opportunity to invest in some investments that are only available to the citizens of that country. In some cases, it could be to buy land, right? You might be able to buy a condo in a country, but you're not allowed to buy land or farming land unless you're a citizen. And so that also opens up potential opportunities for investment that way. And also with having another citizenship, where we went with through COVID and the pandemic, and the Canadian government started to threaten people. Well, if you don't get vaccinated, or if you're going to protest these mandates we have, we won't renew your passport. We won't give you a passport. We're going to freeze your bank accounts. And they did that to people because they protested. I mean, I have a right to protest. Now, I'm never for violent protests. I hate that. There's no need for it. But I should be able to stand outside with a sign and protest. And I mean, and again, not in the street blocking traffic. There's good ways to protest that you can still protest and not cause problems. But just because I'm not agreeing with you, you're going to freeze my bank accounts. You're not going to give me a passport so I cannot travel. Like, that's dictatorship. That's not freedom.
Yeah. And sorry, but in most Western countries, it's in the Constitution that you have a right of speech, that you can voice your opinion freely. And that also means protest, and protest against what you think is absolute bullshit. So,
right. I mean, they don't ask me when they're giving billions of dollars to other countries, or to build a walking bridge across a river, or like to do some of these crazy things that they do with our taxpayers' money. And if I don't like it, like, you're supposed to be voted in and elected in, and the government is supposed to be working for us, not us working to give money to the government for them to do whatever they want to with it.
oh, haven't you read the update? We have that in our country now. We have this update. We don't work for you anymore. You just pay us so we can do whatever shit we want.
Yeah. And I don't agree to that. And that's why diversifying globally, and like, there is no perfect country in the world, and there is no absolute perfect plan that's ideal, but we can make the plan that's best for us. Like I've had a client we were talking to, and she says, well, I will not have my company anywhere where they don't treat women well. And I'm like, great. I mean, you're a woman business owner. You have the right to that. And that's fine. We won't look at those countries. And what is treated well. I mean, what we also have to look at is the media propaganda. And there's some people that don't like this when I say it, but it's absolutely true. US citizens get US propaganda. Canadians get Canadian propaganda. Spanish get Spanish propaganda. The Russians get Russia propaganda. The Chinese get Chinese propaganda. The difference is the Russians and the Chinese generally know that they're getting one-sided propaganda, where people in most Western countries, they think, oh no, it's factual. The news said it. It's like, no. The best thing people can do is turn off mainstream media.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. Like, I haven't watched the news in, I don't know how long.
Yeah. You know, I get updates. I'm aware of what's going on in the world. I get updates and I follow different things, and I'll read some headlines. But when I look at any type of article, any news, anything, I think if it's really good, like at best, which nobody is ever at best, it's 50% accurate.
Yeah.
That's my top of the line is it's 50% accurate, because in some part, they have to get it out so fast that they just don't take the time to find out the facts.
Yeah.
And then also it's who's paying their paycheck. And that's
Yeah.
will tend to lean towards, or the stories that they give. Because, it's North America. No other country is better than the US or the Canadians. We're in the best country in the world, or, and it's like, you're according to what? What makes something the best country in the world? The number of places they can travel because of their passport? How much money the GDP is? How safe it is? The weather? The cost of living? Like what? And everybody will rate all of those things different. So there is kind of really, for everyone, there is no best country, because everybody's perspective is different as to what makes something the best country. So there is no best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, speaking about the best, you have lived in 5 countries. You have traveled to over 50 countries. You help people locate their business in countries, and also about real estate and internationally. So, what is the best country to live in?
Well, that depends. Like it depends on what you want. So like I've lived in several, and everyone has benefits and challenges. There isn't one. I mean, I lived in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is so beautiful. The weather's great, except for it's hot or really hot. Like sometimes I loved it for probably the first 2 years I was there. I was like, oh, I needed to get warmed up to the bone of, living in Canada for so many years. But after a while, it was, I want to go to the capital or go to the city or go somewhere where I'm not sweating most of the day, or, not having to have the air condition on. And where I lived, it was beach community. It was great, but it was kind of small. So I got bored. And that's kind of where I am at now. So I split my time, generally speaking, when I'm not traveling, between Spain and Montenegro. And a lot of people don't even know where Montenegro is. It's a very small country. So it's in Europe. It's south of Croatia. And if we were looking at a map, south of Croatia, where we have Greece, north of Greece is Albania, and then Montenegro. And then to the west is Italy, right? So it's just along that coast. And the population of the entire country is just over 650,000 people. So it's small. So some people, they would be, forget it, but it's so beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I love going there. And then I get bored because it's small and there's not a lot going on. So then I go back to Spain, and I spend a lot of time in Barcelona, and I've got friends there, and I love Barcelona. I lived there for years and I love it. And it's great. And there's so many people, and there's so many tourists. And there's so many people and so many tourists. And then I start to hate them. So then I'm like, I need to go. And then I go back to Montenegro, and I'm like, oh, I love it. This is great. And after I think the longest I've ever stayed there at one time was maybe 3 months. And then I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I need something more. And so for me, that's perfect. Right. And I do travel a lot. Like this year, it's been an unusual year, but I've spent one night in my place in Montenegro this year. That's how much traveling I've been doing and away. And I mean, I'm gone for like months at a time though. So currently where I'm at, I'm here for 3 months. So I will like be in places for longer periods of time. But I love it. It works for me for the most part. I mean, this is a little unusual for a year, but having two places is great. For me, my goal is to have four places, four different countries. And then I have the home, I have it set up. It works for me. I've got my business in other countries. I've got banking. I think 5 different bank accounts in different countries. And obviously having residency or citizenship makes it easier to open up those bank accounts, but there's still online banking options that people can go online, open it up, and use a debit card and do easy transfers of money. And I highly recommend, if nobody gets anything else from our whole conversation, open up another bank account in another country for many reasons. One, the government decides to freeze your bank account because you protested or donated to a protest. And then I know there's always people like, well, I don't protest. I wouldn't do that. Great. That's good. But what about identity theft? That happens. You never know. And your bank account can just get frozen or drained and you have to prove that it wasn't you. So then at least if you have money in another bank somewhere, you can pay your bills, buy groceries. And cyber attacks, they are happening more often. Now, it would have to be pretty wide for them to hit more than one country at one time. But again, then you still have your bank card. You've got some money in it. And you can, again, buy food, pay your bills, pay your mortgage, buy groceries until things get resolved.
Okay, so how does that work? If I don't have citizenship, how can I, like, for example, you're Canadian, you're North American, I'm European. So how can I like open up a bank account in, I don't know, Dubai, Australia, America? How does that work?
Well, each one has their own specific rules. So some of them you will have to go there in person. So that's obviously a challenge, depending upon where it is. Some of them you need hundreds of thousands or hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars, which is another challenge. But there are smaller ones that we can use and other banks that don't need as much. And you could either, in some cases, we can do it remotely or hire somebody and give them a power of attorney to open an account. But some great online ones to look at, especially like for Europeans, N26 is a great one. Revolut is another one. And I think that Revolut you might be able to get within North America as well. I was in Europe when I've got mine because I've been there for a while. But and also Wise. I love Wise. It used to be Wise Transfer, but now it's just Wise. And you can use them to transfer. They're better than any bank for transferring funds. I use them basically as my bank. So when people pay me and I have clients, they pay via Stripe. And then from Stripe, it goes right into my Wise account. And I've got all kinds of currencies. And I was in Dubai earlier this year and I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm only here for this long. How much money do I really want to spend? And I went onto my Wise, onto my phone, and I just said, oh yeah, I need to open up another account or another currency. Basically, it's not really another account. And I clicked on the dirham is what they use in Dubai. I clicked on dirham and they said, how much do you want to transfer? I put in X amount, done. And when I got to Dubai, I just tapped my same Wise card and I was using local currency.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so I love them and I recommend them 100%. And you can go online and apply. But those are kind of three good ones that only N26. I think you have to be European for that one, but I believe the Revolut and definitely Wise anybody can get.
Okay. Awesome. That's great advice. Because one of my questions that I wanted to ask you is, you're Canadian, you work with North Americans a lot. So does that, like your system, your strategy, does it also work for the rest of the world?
It does. The thing of putting it together, I mean, there's kind of lots of pieces to the puzzle. And so a few things we have to think about is how do you make your money? Right.
Mhm.
So for me with consulting, they pay through Stripe. So I just make sure that my corporation and my bank, my company bank, is in a place that will use Stripe, because Stripe, and just like PayPal and a number of others, they're not available in every single country around the world. So you have to take into consideration how you're getting paid. If you're doing wire transfers, if somebody's, they everything is a high ticket item and they just use wire transfers, well, then there's more options because it's easier to do a wire transfer. In most countries, again, there's some that there's more hoops and things to jump through, but it can be done. And so that's one way that we have to look at the kind of big picture. The other is if you're not like a consultant or a coach or something, and you're an influencer, and maybe it's YouTube, and you make all your money off of YouTube, and you're from the United States. And a prime example was somebody who said, well, yeah, I'm a YouTuber and I'm gonna move to Dubai because there's no tax in Dubai, which it was true, but that's actually changing. It's 9% now. There's a few free zones still available, but that's going to change in 2026. So it will be 9%. Still substantially lower than other countries. But even in this case, if you're from the United States and or you're making money within the United States, say through YouTube or Amazon or things like that, they'll ask you, well, where's your company? Are we paying you as an individual or the company? And then if it's the company, well, where's your company? And if you say Dubai, there is no tax treaty between the United States and Dubai. So then those companies will automatically withhold 30%. So now you're paying 30% tax when you think, oh, I'm just going to go to Dubai and sure it's 9%, or beforehand it was 0. But that's not true. It's not quite that black and white. So we also have to look at, where do you get your income from? If it's an entity such as that, then is there a tax treaty in place? Now, that doesn't mean you can't reduce it. You could maybe then open up your business where there is a tax treaty, and you may be paying less taxes. It might not get down to 0, but we could get down to single digits, which could still save a lot of money. And in a lot of places, you don't have to be a resident or a citizen to open up a corporation and have your corporate headquarters there. I mean, if we look at Amazon, we look at Facebook, and those companies, sure, they've got offices and things within the United States, but like I believe it's Alphabet, they are in Ireland. And I think Amazon is also in Liechtenstein, and they're in others. So when people are like, oh, it's illegal, offshore corporations. No, it's not, because otherwise all these super rich people would be in jail. And all the shareholders of those companies, which have hundreds, thousands, would all be in jail, because it's not illegal. Like, they are allowed to be registered. They're filing, they're doing everything they're supposed to. They're just there because they don't want to pay the high taxes that we generally have in North America as a whole, Canada or the US. So they move that corporation offshore. And some people say, well, they still have, how it gets tricky is they still have some corporate entities in the United States, which is true. Some of them can, but the owner of that entity is the head office, which is outside the country. Mm-hmm. So they can have their inside, and all the money that company makes then gets invoiced and sent to head office for all types of work and things that they say. It could be like, oh, well, you're using our logo. We're charging you $50 million a year to use our logo. And if they made 50 million, well, technically then the company broke even, and the corporate company, who's in a very low tax zone, made the $50 million, not the one that would be paying 40%.
Oh, this is such a good
topic. It does get a little bit, it is a bit of a web, and it is, but I mean, and the more money you have, the more assets you have, the more of a web it becomes. And I don't want people to think, oh, well, I'm not making $1 million. You don't have to be making millions of dollars. I think if somebody kind of hits that, either they just start and they know they're going to scale pretty quick, or they're making close to 6 figures. If you're self-employed, especially a coach, consultant, or anything like that, and you're right up around that 6-figure mark, that's really, you want to be looking at these alternatives. If you're still an employee and they're withholding taxes from you and you're starting your side business, don't open up a corporation yet, because you have those write-offs from your side business of all your startup. You need to get a printer, you need a new computer, you need to do all these things, your marketing. You can use those expenses against your personal income tax and get some of that tax money back that you've paid in through your what do you call it? Like through your personal employee taxes. But then there becomes a time when it's not beneficial anymore, and then you do need to incorporate because you just don't have those tax advantages. You've used them up, and your company's now making too much that it just doesn't offset anymore.
Yes. Okay. Whew.
So a lot of information.
That's a lot of information, but it's good
Wow.
information, you know?
Mhm.
I always say, why do we have the subject in school that we have when a whole life is out there that is completely different? Like, why do we learn math the way we do when we could learn more about money and how we can use our money?
Well, because the governments don't want us to, right? And
Mm,
the education system was train them to go work in a factory or go work at a job and have that job. It used to be have that one job and work that one company until you retire at roughly 65, and then you generally die by 70.
yeah.
Right. It wasn't, and they used 65 because and at one point, I believe, and I don't know when they came up with it, but I had heard that they picked 65 because most people didn't even live till 65 when they said that was the retirement age. So they're like, oh yeah, you work, once you retire, we'll take care of you. You pay into it when you hit 65. But a lot of people weren't even making it to 65. And
Mm,
now there's an issue because, if you start working at, let's just say 20 for easy math, from 20 to 65, that's 45 years. But if now we're living to 100, we haven't paid in 50% to even get 50% back. Like it's not working. And I know that they take the money and they're supposed to invest it, but not all investments work out, as we know.
yep.
Um, and and so we really need to, we kind of need to look out for number one. We want to live comfortably, live the life that you want. And it's not, to me, it's not just about money and materialistic things. Like that's kind of low on the totem pole.
Mhm.
Because what happens is people buy things because they're not happy. And that gives them a boost of happiness. And oh, look at this new dress. Look at this new, like, if anybody's ever bought a new car, and we spend a lot of money on a car, I'm not going to eat in it. I'm going to keep it clean. Nobody's going to do nothing. Like it's going to stay spotless. And what, a month later, you're eating a burger, ketchup drops. Like, I don't know if that's, but and then we're just like, oh yeah, it's a car.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with clothes. It's the same thing with a house. I always say to people, stuff doesn't make you happy because there's always newer, bigger, better. No matter where you are, you have a $10 million home. And you think, oh my God, I have a $10 million home. It's amazing. Yeah. And after living in it for about a year, it's just a home. And then there's a $20 million home and a $50 million home. And, so it doesn't change. And it's not, when we look at those blue zones around the world, they're not money places. They're
No.
community, they're outdoor living, they're happy, they're enjoying what they do. They want to give back and help out the neighbor, the community, the area, and it's not about money. So, these things can be done, and I promote, and that's kind of the whole thing. It's not just move offshore so you can have more money, so you can buy yourself more stuff. Like for those people who want to do it, fine. But the way I see it, invest back in your company. How many other people can you help? Or maybe use that to buy a vacation property and enjoy that time with your family. Have your kids go there, your grandkids, whatever it may be. Move to a place. If you're like me and you hate winter in Canada, doesn't mean you have to leave Canada and be gone full time like me. But they're snowbirds. They leave for the winter. I totally get it, especially if we're getting older. The last thing I want to do, even at my age now, let alone older, I don't want to slip on ice and break a hip. Like, no, I would rather be even in Mexico walking on the beach or, wherever else, Paraguay, Uruguay. Those are getting kind of far, but just other places to have a lifestyle that you enjoy. And in a lot of places, the cost of living is a lot less than it is in North America. Parts of Europe are a bit expensive, but other parts are not at all. And then it just depends too, what do you need?
Mm.
Like, what do you really need? And if you're the way that I see it, I love the outdoors. If I'm outdoors enjoying life, like I don't need a big house that costs more to maintain, to clean, to fix, to do all these things if I'm just coming home and sleeping and maybe an odd dinner party here and there. So one room that I can fit a nice big table in for dinner parties, but otherwise the rest of it, more to heat, more to cool, more to clean, more stuff to have to buy to put into it. But I'm bit more of a minimalist that way. I don't buy a lot.
Oh, I could listen to you forever and talk to you forever because this is so fascinating, and the way you do life is so
Mhm.
fascinating and beautiful. And I I just, if you could have one wish, to make one wish that would be fulfilled today if you speak it,
Mhm.
what would that be?
Um, I guess it's for people. A big part I would say for people to realize that it's not money and power that generally makes us happy. It's community and by community, it's your friends, it's your neighbors, it's the people who do the things that you love to do, that rock climbing group, that church group, that whatever it is, it's find what you like to do. Be around people who like to do those things. Like life is tough. We all go through hard times. We all have struggles. It doesn't matter how much or little money you have. There's struggles and problems at all levels. But if you find the right community and you find the things that you like to do, then those things that tend to drag us down, the having to keep up with the Joneses, the spending too much money, maybe drinking, maybe drugs, maybe alcohol, like whatever those things, those generally speaking are vices. Food for some, and we all have them. Like I enjoy drinking red wine. I like to eat chocolate. But I also love going to the gym and I love being out with friends. So I used to say a long time ago, and it's still true, but I would say I go to the gym so I can eat what I want.
Mm.
And I enjoy both. And I don't always. There's times I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym today, or I don't want to. But when we find the community and the people, we don't need a big house. We don't need a lot of things, and we enjoy life. If we look at happiness indexes, in a lot of times, the most happy people are the ones that are not in super rich countries. They're obviously not in the poorest countries either. There is a certain level. I'm not saying that money doesn't matter, but how big of a house do you need? How many pairs of shoes do you need? Like when we think of what we really need, somebody who's making um, somebody who's happy with their life and making, let's say, $100,000 a year, if there's somebody who's not happy, they could be making 200, 500, a million. They're still not happy. They're not that many times happier. It's like, oh, I'm twice as happy making 200,000 as I was 100,000. That's
Mm.
that's not true. And when we talk to people, and I know it's easier said because we don't experience it, we think it, but there's so many that said, I had this goal of reaching like $1 million. And that's a big goal for a lot of people to reach that $1 million. That's a lot of money. And so many who've reached it, they said, oh yeah, I reached it. Okay. They felt no different.
Mhm.
It's different, of course, if you win the lottery. But then what
Oh,
happens to most people who win the lottery? 5 years later, they're bankrupt and they're worse off than they were beforehand.
yeah.
And so it's not the money that buys us happiness. We have to think of what we enjoy doing and having those things in that community around us. And so if I could wish for anything, it would be for people to realize that and
Mm.
just realize like what makes you happy, what would you love to do, and spend more time doing that. If you love reading, have a library in your house and have a room that you love and it's just decorated, and I mean you put money into that and you do that. If you love watching movies, then make that room a home theater in your home. If you like rock climbing and kind of those adrenaline sports, you can go out and find those people who like that and go do it.
That is a wonderful wish and a perfect advice. And everything through everything that you have said, I feel this. I feel the frequency of gratitude flowing
Mhm.
through there, and this makes my heart like jump, because I truly believe that gratitude is when we feel gratitude for whatever, if it's the food, the people, our bodies, when they're healthy, even when we overcame something, the house, the material goods, but also, the love that we have in our lives, I think our life is a lot better. And I think that's what you said about the people living in the blue zones, that they're focusing on community and about
Mhm.
the love in between people more than the material goods.
Yeah, and if you've read any type of books or spoke with people who've worked in hospice and with people who are kind of on their deathbed, they always say, I wished I would have learned
Mm,
another language, traveled to Italy, done these things. None of them say, oh, I remember that big house I bought.
yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, what's that name? I mean, I like some of these brand names are ridiculous for like purses that are $20,000, which I think is absurd. But it's not like they don't think of, oh, I had these materialistic things because you're not taking them with you.
Yeah.
But the experience is like, even when I go shopping, and I love dresses, I'm a drag queen because I just throw on a dress, go out the door, and it's good. Not don't have to match anything, and so I love it. And when I buy a dress, I'll spend a bit more money on a nice dress that I like. But then I also think, do I love it? If I don't
Mm,
absolutely love it, I usually say, I'll wait and I'll come back. I have to think about it. 9 times out of 10, I forget about it.
yeah.
So I didn't really love it and I didn't need it. The other part is if I do really love it, then I think, okay, it's X amount. And of course, being in Europe, it's a lot cheaper to travel within Europe. So when I'm there, I'm like, oh, if this dress is 150 euro, I think that's a flight somewhere. Would I rather fly somewhere and go to a country or city that I haven't been to yet? And of course, I'll end up spending more money. I'm aware. But I think, do I want to have that experience or do I really like this dress? Would I rather buy a flight somewhere or have a dress? And
Well, I would like to wear that dress on the flight too.
well, and I do that. I do buy it and I do go. But it's things like that it comes back to, again, what do we need?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we buy things that we don't need. And or I know people that pay for storage bins, hundreds of dollars a month. It's like, if it's in storage, you probably don't need it.
Yeah.
Or how much stuff do you have in your garage or in your basement or and I get there's some family things and there's sentimental value, and of course there's going to be some things,
Mhm.
but that's not a whole storage unit. And what value does it have to you if it's just sitting in storage? You're not using it.
Yeah.
So it has no value and it's costing
Yeah.
because it's stuff that you're having to pay for the storage. Or even if it's in your basement, why do you need such a big house if you have so much stuff that you have rooms that you don't even use? What
Yep.
do you need? And therefore, if you could downsize, and I'm all about fixing things too. I want to try to fix something before I have to rebuy it because I would rather spend my money on going out with friends, traveling, doing things, and having wonderful life experiences, because that's what life is about. For me, it's not work to buy a knickknack to sit on the coffee table and be like, oh, isn't that nice? Or you know, a picture on the wall. Like I do have some pictures and some of them are a bit expensive, but I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
So,
Um, that when we moved from our apartment into our house, yes, we bought a house, but but when we moved, we also did that. When we packed stuff, we were like, do we want to take this with us? Is this something that we want in this next chapter of our life? And
mhm,
I have 8 boxes, like moving boxes,
mhm,
full of kids' clothes. And it's ridiculous. My daughter has outgrown them years ago, and my
mhm.
son looked at most of it and said, "Nah." So, of course, now it's sitting there. Like half of the stuff I gave to charity, but
Hmm.
the rest of the stuff is like, what to do with it?
What to do. And, charities are great to donate and give things to. For some people, you can sell some of the things that you have. There's all kinds of marketplaces in every country and things to sell. And that's a win because it's still used. It's not going in any type of landfill. You're getting a little bit of money for it. Somebody else is loving it and enjoying it. One of the things I've done too, when I was in Barcelona, before I left, I did a clothing exchange. And so I invited
Mm.
my friends and I said, bring clothes, shoes, jewelry, like whatever it is that you have that you don't want, and bring it. And we'll exchange. You can exchange what you want. If you think it's a good deal to exchange, or you're just like, here, anybody want any of it, take it. Oh, I like these things. And a lot of people, like everybody was happy because something that was old for me, and I have things for years, it's brand new to somebody else and
Yeah.
they love it and wear it and they're happy. And then with everything that was left over, I just posted, I said, I have a lot of leftover stuff from a clothing exchange. If somebody wants it, they have to take it all. It's like I boxed it up into a couple boxes. You take it all and have it, use it, donate it if you know charity, whatever it may be. And all the girls that were there were very happy. And then the other girl that came and picked up, she was like, wow, this is so much stuff. It's amazing. And so I don't know how many additional people had that ripple effect. And I was happy to get rid of it.
Yeah. And I love this mentality of fixing and giving it to other
Mhm,
people, because I also
mhm.
don't like this, hire and fire mentality where you're like, oh, I buy a t-shirt, oh, I wore it once, oh, go away.
Well, a thing that I have, and because I do move around quite a bit and I travel a lot, so I generally have a golden rule that if I buy something, and it started because I was traveling and I was like maxed out. I had a carry-on and a big purse, and I don't even know how many months I was traveling, and I was like weight limit maxed. And so I thought, well, if I buy something, I have to get rid of something. And
Mm.
that has stuck with me, and not as much now because, I mean, at times now, there's sometimes that I will buy something and not get rid of it, but I still think about it. I think, "Do
Mhm.
I really need this? And if I'm gonna buy this if I'm gonna buy this dress, what dress would I get rid of?" And
Mm.
then if I don't wanna get rid of any of my dresses, then I said, "Well, I guess I don't need another dress because I can only wear one at a time." So,
Et voila, problem
mhm,
solved.
yeah. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
because
there's many ways to have a lifestyle that's ideal for you. And I think people just really need to think, what is ideal? And one of the downfalls to social media is we see all the great, wonderful things, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's life is so perfect and so great and so wonderful, but it's really not. They're only posting the good times. And sometimes even those posts are fake. Like they will not be good. And then like, oh my God, oh, hi, oh, I'm so good. Yeah, okay. And then once it's done, they're like back to not
Yeah.
happy. And so the yeah, it's finding the things that you love and doing the things that you love to do, and start out like you're not just all of a sudden gonna quit your job and travel the world because you love travel, but there are ways also to travel where it's not expensive. I do house sitting, house and pet sitting, and so I'm in Nashville right now for 3 months, living in someone's house, taking care of their cat.
Beautiful.
Now 3 months is unusual, but I am usually a month, and I started when I first started doing it to build up a reputation and things like that. It started with a week. Sure, I'll take care of your cat for a week. Sure, I'll take care of your dog for a week. And it was only a week. But now with my travel schedule, I look at the longer ones, but I still look at it because I'm not paying to stay in a hotel for a month. Hotels are ridiculous. Even Airbnbs are, well, now with like you hear all the stories of hidden video cameras and things like that. I wonder and the cost. And so with doing house and pet sitting, I don't get paid, but I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying hotel fees, and there's a kitchen, so I'm cooking. It's just like I'm living at home, still working, still doing everything. And so there are other ways for people who like to travel that can find ways to do it. It was something that it was said to me a long time ago. And I heard it, but I was just kind of like, yeah, it makes sense. But I'm looking at getting into a coaching program, and the guy said it to me, and it really kind of clicked. He's like, it's not about it's not about your resources. It's about your resourcefulness. I was like,
Mm.
oh. And I always say to people, when there's a will, there's a way. And I was like, ooh, eat my words. When there's a will, there's a way. How do you live? What do you want? What is important? And everything has some sacrifice. Like you can't, as they say, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Although to me that no one never made sense, because if I have my cake, I'm eating it. Why would I have cake and not eat it? but it is. And sometimes it's time, right? Sometimes it's okay, you're not going out for dinner every week, or you're not going to be hanging out with your friends every Friday because you're going to start working that side business, or because you really like, I don't know, artwork, and you want to like, no, I want to take an art class and I want to improve and work on my art. Trust me, doing that, sure, you'll miss your friend, but you'll still see your friends, but you'll be more fulfilled doing those things that you really love to do than the same, oh yeah, I meet my friends and we do kind of the same, and it's not really that exciting. You got to feed the soul.
Mm. Oh God, Sally, I could talk to you forever, but this was such a beautiful conversation. And yes, it needs to nourish the soul. It needs to feed your heart rather
Mhm.
than your stomach or your material lust. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for coming on, and safe travels.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. And I loved our conversation, and hopefully it inspires some people to, as we say, the slogan of Global Citizen Life is live your best life.
Mm, thank you. And that's it. That's it for today. That's our show. If you love this conversation, then go over to Sally's website, globalcitizens.org, or meet her on social media. All of the links are in the show notes where you can reach her. She is amazing, like you heard. We completely overstepped our usual time limit because there was so much gold in the situation. That's why I'm giving you a double high five, because you have just blown your mind with so much information, and I bet you're questioning your living situation at the moment. So, like I said, if you want to connect with Sally, go in the show notes, in the podcast description, in the YouTube description underneath this video, and check her out. It's amazing. If you have any questions for me, reach out to bea@superwoman.coach or on social media, Instagram @moving_river. And until next time, keep shining, keep learning, keep growing, and keep flowing.